Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Relic Picks. This time we're going to do Bellator 219, Awad versus Gertz. No, we're not, because that card's bullshit. And most of those are just slaughters waiting to happen. They're just slaughters waiting to happen. Especially the Korishnikov Jasper fight. That's like, what is going on there? But anyway, welcome to the first official episode of Relic Picks. We're going to do Barboza versus Gaethje, which will be the March 30th card. Today's the 27th, as per usual. And, yeah, let's get to it. We're going to do there's a slightly different format kind of thing in terms of what you guys will see instead of just a straight screen capture this time. A little bit different for you guys. We'll have some just some screenshots, essentially, and because it'll look better. Anyway, last card was... Just real briefly to talk about UFC Nashville. My parlay worked with Marcos and Pettis. Got, $5 turned into $55.10. That was pretty great. And then I also had $10 on Pettis just as a straight pick to win. And I had $5 on Marcos. So both of those two together, I didn't do the math. Yeah, so that card went pretty well. Out of my underdog picks, we had 3 of 5. Those being Marcos, who I said was the best dog to pick on because Angela Hill doesn't know how to wrestle, and lo and behold, Marcos won and actually got an armbar. So good for her, good for her. Then Pettis as well, and then Espinosa because the judges just always hate Eric Shelton. So 3 of 5 is not bad for underdog picks. And then my favorites only went 2 and 2 because Davis did really stupid stuff. She wins a round on the ground and then decides, hell, I'll just keep striking with this girl. And it's like, just why would you do that? And Muffet overcommitted to the submissions, so those two lost. And then Vera starched Frankie Saenz. That was awesome. Love Vera. Oh, Chris Gutierrez won his fight. Yeah, and obviously, my props weren't that great because Ryan McDonald was too damn tough. Other than that, Pettis finished his fight, so that was what I said was going to happen. I called Willis Blades going to decision because I was like, Blades just doesn't finish people very well. So not a bad card. That was actually a really good card, especially because of my parlay. So I loved that card. That was great. The Polish KZW card went well for me too, but we didn't talk about that, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so let's actually get into the picks here. We're going to do this one pretty quickly. I've already looked over everything, and I've got what I want to say in mind. Well, not really what I want to say, but I got the picks in mind. So these odds are, if I'm showing the odds screen, I think I will be at this point. These odds are as of Wednesday, March 27th. There'll be no episode, by the way, next week because there's no fight card next week. They're taking a week off. There'll be one for the Wednesday prior to April 13th, okay? Alright, so let's get into this. So Alex Perez, Mark De La Rosa. Mark De La Rosa's going to lose. I think this has the potential to be kind of close, but I like Alex Perez in this fight. I think he just hits harder than De La Rosa. I think he's a better striker than De La Rosa. It gets a little squirrely if it goes to the ground. That could make some oddities happen. Mark De La Rosa at a plus 269 underdog is pretty decent. Because I don't see this as being the least likely outcome. I don't see him winning being the least likely outcome. But I didn't put money on him. I don't think he's a great dog to take a risk on. I think Perez wins that fight. Marna the Iron Lady Moroz versus Sabina Mazo. I think Sabina Mazo's nickname is like Colombian Queen. Sabina Colombian Queen Mazo, is that right? Sabina Mazo only has wins by TKO and decision. If we go through Sabina Mazo's recent fights, I believe that her opponents have all not been that great. Now, a couple of them have been okay. So we'll go through the last 3. She has a 7-3 opponent. Alright, that's fair enough. A 3-6 so that doesn't count really. And a 2-3. Okay. That's a problem. There's not much going on there. She has 2 victories via TKO KO, and then 4 decision victories. Okay. Versus Marna, the Iron Lady Morose, who has 2 decision victories, 5 submissions, 1 TKO KO, and then 3 decision losses. So, and obviously Marna has fought way better competition. So let's then in comparison to her opponent, like not saying that Sabina isn't. I'm not saying that the people that Marna has fought are better than Sabina. What I'm saying is the people that Marna has fought are better than the people Sabina has fought. Okay, that's what I was trying to say. What I see happening here is probably we're gonna get some stupid striking exchange where it'll be kind of like Marna Morose versus Angela Hill, where it was just like, what the hell are we even doing here? Because nothing's getting done. That's my fear of what will happen. Like, I don't really see anyone throwing with intent in this fight. Like, I don't see a lot of damage being done. But either way, Marna Morose has fought better people, so I think Marna Morose probably will get this one done. Even more so if Marna if Morose is is doing what Relic would like. What Relic would like is for her to just get a takedown and tap Sabina Mazo, because that seems to be the path of least resistance. I don't think Morose will do that. She tends to, as I've previously mentioned, she tends to need her opponent to get the fight to the floor. Like, she needs her opponent to shoot in on her as opposed to her shooting on her opponent. So I don't see that necessarily being a thing that will happen. I don't really think that there's a lot of problems with Marna Morose. I mean, she's kind of like the Alexis Davis problem as well, where she'll just do weird things, A, but B, I think her team isn't that great, because if I was her coaching staff, I'd be like, just take them down, okay? Like, just take Angela Hill down. Try at least. Don't just settle for a striking exchange. Like, I don't know. And she's very one-dimensional, Morose, in terms of her striking. It's a very one-dimensional, inaccurate striking, so if Morose settles for just a straight up striking exchange the same way she did with Angela Hill, she's probably gonna lose. But as long as she tries to put some extra pressure on or go for a takedown, I think she'll win. So I think Morose is a pretty good pick here. Sabina hasn't really fought that high level of competition, and if Marna just goes for a takedown, if she gets this fight to the floor, I think she'll win that pretty easily. So, not that she's like the best submission. I'm not saying she'll get a submission. I'm just saying, like, she had Daniel Taylor on the ground for a while, and I think she had Daniel Taylor in a neck crank. Is that right? Yeah, I mean, she tends to be better than some of these other girls, at least in doing something on the ground. Like, she knows at least some stuff about fighting on the ground. So take advantage of that, because some of these girls do not know anything about it. So you gotta take advantage. Like Daniel Taylor didn't know what to do, so take advantage of it. You're dealing with low level competition in terms of they just haven't really, it's been too easy for them, so they haven't developed that grappling resume. Take advantage of that while you can. So hopefully Marna will do so. But we'll see. I do think she's a great underdog pick for this. Cassie Kenny versus Ray Borg. Cassie Kenny's like a debuting fighter. Weird that they're still signing flyweights whenever they're apparently shuttering that division. I don't know what the hell's going on with that. I'm really hoping the UFC keeps the flyweight division. Like, just, you don't have to make it a very heavy division. There doesn't have to be a bunch of guys in it, but, hire like the best flyweights in the world. Maybe like have 15 flyweights or something on hand or some nonsense. Just keep it like an elite group of flyweights, just so that there's a division there, but also so there's more people vying for flyweights as opposed to just ONE FC. Debuting fighter versus Ray Borg. Ray Borg is pretty damn good. This other dude, I don't know too much about, obviously, because, he's debuting. Looking at the last 4 opponents he's fought: 6-1, 8-4, 12-8, 8-4. So that's not too bad, honestly, in terms of records. I mean, we've seen a lot worse. So, and we will see someone who's a lot worse than that in a little bit as well. But His fifth opponent, who he would last lost to, was Adam Antolin, who almost got a chance in the UFC, but Elias Garcia knocked him out and put that to rest. Unfortunately for him, I just don't see this dude being like this. Yeah, he's fought some decent guys, and he's probably a decent flyweight. But Ray Borg has beat Jussier Formiga, who I picked to beat Davis and Figueroa. No, not officially. I said my inclination was to pick Formiga, but I was a little scared of that fight. And Jesus, Figueroa did some damage. But Borg's beat Formiga. He beat Smolka. So I think that Borg has still beaten enough good guys and fought enough good guys that he can beat Cassie Kenny. So I picked Borg for that. Gerald Meerschaert versus Kevin Holland. Meerschaert has recently beat some prospect, right? Yeah, Oscar Picota. He lost to his last time out. He lost to Jack Hermanson, but before that, he beat Oscar Picota, who people were kind of like, "Oh, Oscar's pretty good." I was like, "Oh, Oscar seems pretty good," and he just choked Oscar out. It was pretty great. Before that, he got that kick on Spitesly that ended the fight, if I recall correctly. So Meerschaert's not like the greatest, but he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Kevin Holland's lost to Thiago Santos, and he tapped John Phillips. Again, pretty good. But if we're going to be, I think that's so Meerschaert's the underdog. He should be the underdog. I think that he's pretty tough. I think he's a little underrated. But in this case, I can definitely see Kevin Holland just knocking him out. I can see that being a pretty high possibility. But what I think is going to end up happening is this fight's going to go to the ground, and I think Meerschaert's going to end up winning probably via submission. I really do see Meerschaert winning this fight. Honestly, I do. I think that he's better on the ground. I think he's a better grappler than Holland, and I think that's where he'll make the moves to get the win. So that's what I would expect if I'm expecting Meerschaert to win that. Henrique Barzola versus Kevin Aguilar. Kevin Aguilar is oddly an underdog at this time on some sites. I put a bet on him while he was an underdog, so I was like, sweet. Aguilar beats Rick Glenn. Enrique Barzola is pretty good. He's a pretty good fighter, but if you look through Kevin Aguilar's record, he's fought some tough dudes. Not only Rick Glenn, who, if I remember right, I think he hurt Glenn pretty bad. But the four opponents before that, here are their records: 7-1, 8-2, 7-3, 16-2. Now records obviously don't mean that much because, who are they fighting, etc., that kind of thing. But I'm just trying to illustrate that, he's not been fighting like 8-23 guys, I would think that Aguilar is the more dangerous of these two fighters. I really do think he gets this done. Especially because he got through Rick Glenn, and Rick Glenn's pretty tough to get through. So I do think Kevin Aguilar is going to beat Enrique Barzola. But it'll be a close fight. It'll be a hard fight, because, Barzola has beaten Brandon Davis, Matt Bessette. Both of those two guys I think are pretty good. He's also lost a split decision to Kyle Bochniak. Enrique Barzola is pretty good. But I would believe that Aguilar can get that one done. He seems to be the more dangerous of the fighter of the two, and I think that just a decision isn't very likely to go in Barzola's favor because judges tend to like people who look like they're the more dangerous fighter, and I think Aguilar does a pretty good job of looking more dangerous than Barzola will. But Barzola, it's up in the air. Who knows? I like Aguilar in that fight. Desmond Green to Ross Pearson. Pearson's still fighting. He's been around for a long time. Tough dude. Not, I wouldn't say very, he doesn't have a bunch of weapons. Let's do that. Let's say that. Um, a lot of his fights go to decision, but he's not he doesn't got much variation in his attacks, and he's not got this crazy knockout power. Against Desmond Green, who's also a decision kind of guy, I just think Desmond Green outworks him and wins. Now, Pearson might just walk into a knockout. Like he might get knocked out by Desmond Green by being aggressive, because that's kind of Pearson's deal. But I just see Desmond Green being the more efficient striker and ending up winning that. So, yeah. Marina Rodriguez versus Jessica Aguilar. Marina Rodriguez went to a draw with Randa Marcos. Marcos fought a horrible fight in that one. More so than saying Rodriguez is like really great. Jessica Aguilar, I at first looked at this and said, well, Aguilar's probably going to lose. But thinking about it a little bit more, I think Aguilar can get this done. I think she's a decent underdog bet. If Aguilar tries to stand with Rodriguez, it's not going to go well for her. She's not going to win that as a decision, but if she gets the fight to the floor, it could absolutely go her way. I don't see that being out of the realm of possibility. I think that she can absolutely get that done as long as she gets the fight to the floor. If she can't do that, then she's screwed. But honestly, I like her in that fight because, again, I favor people who have more weapons, and I also favor people who have a distinct advantage on the ground. Sodiq Yusuf, that's not even his name in the slightest, versus Shaman Moraes. Okay, I like Sodiq Yusuf in this fight. If you look through Sadiq's record, he has fought a lot of really, really tough dudes, and what we've seen of Shaman Moraes, in my opinion, hasn't been very compelling. I just don't think he's that. He's definitely tough, and he's good. He's a good fighter, but I just don't think that he's got. I don't think he's a great contender. The people he's beaten in decisions, I don't think are all. I don't think are particularly great. I'm just not thinking that he's gonna be a good enough to beat Sadiq. So my inclination again is that Sadiq will win this fight. All right, Kennedy. Oh God, Kennedy Nzechukwu. It's not even close. Versus Paul the Bear Jew Craig. Look, you never bet against Paul the Bear Jew Craig. He has too cool of a nickname for anyone to ever bet against him, but he's not actually that great of a fighter. As we know with Paul Bear Jew Craig, he's won 2, lost 3 in the UFC, and he's obviously gotten just murdered by Tyson Pedro and Khalil Roundtree. But he tapped Henrique da Silva, and he tapped Magomed Ankalaev. Magomed, again, that was a weird one, but he was getting destroyed in that fight, and then boop, last second tap, it was awesome. Made me some money. Anyway, so I like Paul Craig, I really do. He's not like the greatest fighter, but he's pretty good. All right, so if we look at Kennedy's last 4 opponents. We could do 4. Let's do 4 opponents here. Last 4 opponents. He's a 6-0 fighter. No submission victories. Only decisions and TKOs. Alright, so his last 4 opponents, he has a 5-2, a 0-1. I don't know if this person is actually a 0-1, or if, they just don't know his record. Sherdog just doesn't know his record. I don't know. A 7-14. Okay, that's a great one right there. And then a 5-2. So those were his last 4 opponents. And I don't like that. Whenever I look at that, I see something like that, I'm not a huge fan. Okay, and I get it. He's only a 6-0 fighter, He's you got to build him up, but God, I hate whenever I see negative win-loss records. It's just put a 7-14 person against a 7-14 person. Don't use them as fodder. I hate that shit. That's a boxing level move. All right, so I mean, I don't like Kennedy in this fight because he hasn't fought the same level of competition as Paul Craig, and that's a big deal to me. Also, I don't know if he can grapple because there's no submissions. I'm inclined to say no, he probably can't really do much grappling, at least not at the level of Paul Craig. So I'm inclined to say that Paul Craig wins this fight by submission. Or Paul Craig will get murked. It's literally that's the only way I see this going. I don't really see it going to the decision at all. Michelle Waterson, Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I'm sorry, I don't know her name. These two will probably stand and strike for the most part. I favor Karolina in this fight, but it's just such a shit show. It could go either way. Neither one of these do anything particularly neither one of these two are particularly strong in any facet, like any area, but they're both pretty well rounded. So I don't think that I think it's going to be kind of difficult for one of them to assert their game plan in this fight. So that's where this one's a little bit close, so it could get a little squirrely. I think Karolina is the more overall better striker. And I don't think that Michelle's going to have if Michelle pursues this route. I don't even see Michelle trying to really get this fight to the floor, but I don't think that she would necessarily have this I don't think there'd be a large advantage in that area. But, you never know with MMA. You never know. That's why this one's close. I think Karolina wins, but who knows. All right, Josh Emmett, Michael Johnson. Right now, this is pick'em territory. Some sites, there's only one site that lists Josh Emmett as the underdog pick here. And there are no sites that put Michael Johnson as an underdog. Very good, interesting. Emmett wins. That's it. We don't even need to talk about it. Emmett wins. I mean, quite frankly, Michael Johnson hasn't looked great since coming down in weight. He got beat pretty badly by Darren Elkins. He beats Andre Fili. I didn't really agree with that decision, but doesn't matter. He won, but who cares because Andre Fili is touch and go. He beat Artem Lobov. Okay, who cares? Lobov is tough, but that's about all Lobov has. So, if you're a guy who's considered if you're a ranked guy, you should beat Lobov. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Since coming down in weight, he just hasn't looked good. I don't know. I mean, I don't even. He's whatever. Emmett wins. Emmett's going to knock him out, probably. I'm inclined to believe Emmett has more power at this weight class. But I just think it goes better for Emmett. All right? There you go. Jack Hermansson, David Branch. Branch? God, Branch. Sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. I mean, he knocked out Thiago Santos. He beat Jotko, or whatever that guy's name is. Yeah, he won a split decision against Jotko. Knocks out Thiago Santos. And then gets knocked out by Jared Cannonier. David Branch is weird. He has a lot of trouble with certain people, and it's very strange. Jack Hermansson's not the best fighter in the world. I like Hermansson. What I think is going to end up happening. I definitely think Hermansson's the more dangerous of these two in terms of power, in terms of raw strength. So Branch doesn't fare very well against guys who have decent power. So right away, I think Hermansson's gonna win because of that. I think Hermansson's grappling is actually decent enough that he could probably deal with Branch. Again, he has Branch. In my opinion, Branch needs to get the fight to the floor because he's not going to win in the stand-up. That would be my opinion. Because he's the one who needs to get the fight to the floor, that's an advantage for Hermansson. I think Hermansson wins this. And if Hermansson gets in top position, it's even worse for Branch. I just don't like Branch against anyone who can hit hard. It just seems like he has a very, very soft chin. Doesn't seem to have much heart, Like once he gets he seems to get very discouraged by getting hit hard. So I don't know. I just um, don't like him in this fights. Just seems to have he just has problems with guys who can hit hard. It seems at this stage of his career, and he's been through some heavy fights, and he's old, so it's not like we're saying your lack of heart. I think a lot of it, his weak chin and lack of heart, is probably from him being really old and and having gone through the ringer. I don't think it's like before back in the day he was pretty good. Edson Barboza, Justin Gaethje, weird fights, but it should be fireworks probably. It just depends on how Gaethje wants to fight this. Gaethje has shown no inclination to, no desire to wrestle or anything like that, so this will probably end up being a stand-up exchange, because that's what Gaethje does. Gaethje's gonna Gaethje. And I think Barboza just will say, okay, cool, let's play this game, and we'll beat him with crisper strikes. I mean, Barboza has crazy kicks. Crazy kicks. And you want to come in close and you want to play the low kick game with Barboza, you're fucked. That's not going to work for him. He's gonna if he tries to play the low kick game with Barboza, Barboza will kick his legs off. Barboza, he's got to be very careful of Barboza's kicks, just to the head area. I mean, ask Kevin Lee, who almost got flatlined by the wheel kick. I just don't see Gaethje having enough weapons, unless he wants to resort to wrestling, to beat Barboza. Barboza only really loses to guys who have great wrestling. I mean, that's really the only people we see who end up beating Barboza, are guys who can at least threaten the wrestling. If they don't necessarily have to go and go that route, but they have to be able to change the fight when they want to. And Gaethje just doesn't show an inclination to want to do that. He likes the brawl. He likes doing that kind of thing, and I just don't see it working for him. I think that Barboza is just gonna kick his head off, or at the very least, kick the shit out of his legs. So I just don't see this going well for Gaethje. I think Barboza wins this, and I don't see this going to decision. All right, well, that's those picks. Let's do the too long to read version, and let's talk about any props that might be useful in this one. I would say it wouldn't be the worst thing to say that this fight between Marta Moroz and Sabina Mazo doesn't go to decision. That's not the worst bet, but it's very unlikely. I'm just going to tell you that. Kevin Holland, Gerald Meerschaert, that doesn't go to decision in my opinion. There really isn't any good props, I don't believe. Paul Greg Kennedy doesn't go to decision. Emmett Johnson doesn't go to decision, I don't think. Hermanson Branch doesn't go to decision in my opinion. And Barboza Gaethje doesn't go to decision. So out of those, really the only ones that have decent enough odds to do anything with are probably Hermanson Branch, Emmett Johnson. Those are really the only ones that would give you any kind of returns, unless you go with the Moroz Mazo thing. But I'm not going to suggest that because that's an outside chance. Yeah, that's really it. Not a great time for prop bets for this fight card. Let's pull up our too long didn't read notepad here. Here's the notepad. Alright, so to recap, for those people who just want a shorter version, the underdogs I have picked that I think will win this fight, which, depending on when you look at this, because it'll probably be out on Friday, as is usual, Kevin Aguilar might be a favorite by that time. So that's the disclaimer here. But he's an underdog at this point. On Wednesday, the 27th, he's an underdog on Sportbet. Anyway, the underdogs that I have picked out are Marta Moroz, Paul Craig, Kevin Aguilar, and Gerald Meerschaert. Out of these underdogs, my favorite underdog here is Marta Moroz. And then the other three, whatever you feel comfortable with. I mean, I like Paul Craig and Kevin Aguilar, and then Gerald after that. So I think this is actually a pretty good order. The biggest dogs on the card are Ross Pearson and Jessica Aguilar. I would stay away from Ross Pearson, but Jessica Aguilar is probably a pretty good pick. I see her winning that fight, and yeah, I just think she has a better chance than what she's being given here. So I would definitely pick Aguilar as a dog, but it's still a dangerous pick. And And then out of the favorites that I think are decent enough to bet on because of the odds offered are Edson Barboza, Jack Hermanson, Sodiq Yusuf, Josh Emmett, and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I would stay away from Karolina, just not worth it. That fight's too close. I think Hermanson is the best bet out of the Hermanson and Emmett are the two best bets out of those. After that, probably Yusuf, and then after that, Edson Barboza, because that's just a very dangerous. That fight could go a variety of ways. I mean, Gaethje hits hard, so I do think Barboza is pretty likely to win that. But it's just Justin Gaethje. I mean, he flatlined Vic, I think. So yeah, so that's it. Those are the picks that I have that I think are the best for betting. And as I know there's a lot of them here, but I'm just giving you options. But typically, I would say that Hermanson, Emmett for the favorites are probably the best bets. And then for the dogs, I would probably go Aguilar, Moroz, Craig, and then maybe Kevin Aguilar and Gerald Mershart. That's how I see that going. So that's it. That's what I think's going to happen on this card. Hopefully we all make some money. That's it. See you guys 2 weeks from now. Because remember, next week we aren't going to have one of these because there's no UFC that week. And I don't do any other show because I don't care enough. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. And hey, we did a shorter one. Huzzah.